All right, what's up, everybody? This is A7X Fan Ben, and welcome to Pirate CSG podcast number 56. A huge thank you to our latest special guest is Mr. Shane Hartley. He was the art director and one of the graphic designers back at Wizkids when the game was still in print. So thank you for coming on. And how are you nowadays?
Oh, good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's always awesome to talk to folks that worked at WizKids because we always get new insights, and I know the community is going to be excited to hear this episode. So it'll be really fun to
Well,
see what
hopefully I
went
can
on.
remember
Yeah,
everything.
I know it's been almost 20 years, so it's crazy. So how did you get involved with Pirate CSG originally?
So I started with WizKids. I mean, more or less right out of college. I went to art school and got hired on at WizKids originally as like both graphic designer and kind of like illustrator concept artist. So I was doing like concept art illustrations for some of the miniatures and such that were during that time. I think one of the probably the most notable stuff that I had the most involvement in is we did a a little known game miniatures game called Creepy Freaks. And I did a bunch of the illustrations for those. Um and then yeah, I was doing packaging and graphic design and logos early on with the team there.
Nice, nice. So how did you get involved with WizKids like originally? Was it 2003 or?
I think it was 2002 when I got started. Um, yeah, it was like the summer of 2002. And then I was doing a lot of the early packaging design and illustration stuff, and then concept illustration, nothing that actually went to print as far as illustration. And then as time went on, then it moved a little bit like where I moved from graphic designer into I was like a more or less like a design assistant to the design lead to the art director at the time, Sandra Everingham, and really like helped her in leading the design team on creative. And that's about the time that I can remember that when we started working on the Pirates game, and I developed the logo design and packaging and branding for that very first set, and then the subsequent sets, starting that like system that led into the various other sets afterwards.
Yeah, very nice. So you worked with Sandra and I'm sure probably Ethan and Keon Ing,
Yep.
but what other designers and artists did you work with?
Yeah, so it's hard to remember exactly like who I hired and who was on the team at the time. I know Ethan started at WizKids right before I did. There was Shane Small, who many know from Exploding Kittens. He was one of the original founders of Exploding Kittens. Um, and then Kian was there for a little while. Um, I think I hired Daryl for a little while, Daryl Ruswold.
Hmm,
Um,
nice.
and then I'm trying to think, uh, Dustin was there, um, Stephen Walker, Matt McAnally. Matt McAnally actually, when WizKids was uh, ch- purchased by NECA, um, he became like after I left WizKids, he became like the art director at the time of a smaller group, and then shortly thereafter it was sold to NECA, and then they moved everything over to the East Coast. So, but Matt was kind of like my right hand man for a long time, so he had quite a bit of involvement in the work as well. So. There's a few other people in there too. If I'm blanking right now. We had
Yeah,
a pretty big team. When I was art director there and leading the team after I took over after Sandra left, um, I think there was like 13 with both sculptors and designers that I managed at the time. So
yeah. Wow. Yeah, I was recently able to get a prototype copy of the adventure book and I was found some new names in the credits page. So yeah, it makes sense that there was a lot of people involved, especially because there were so
yeah,
many ships and unique crew artwork that almost none of it was reused over the sets. So to design artwork for over 1,000 ships and like hundreds of crew is pretty amazing, especially in such a
Yeah,
short span of time.
as far as I know, there was nothing that was like really reused.
Hmm.
Um, we made sure that everything was somewhat unique in that respect. Like, yes, the different types of ships, we would just stylistically, use similar assets, but then we would customize them appropriately to the theme of the set or the theme of the actual ship itself. And yeah, did all that, from scratch from the beginning. We had quite a few of us that they were usually it was around 3 or 4 the design team that was working on just the texturing of the ships at any one time. And then usually we had another person that was doing the layout of the cards, another person that was doing like the packaging, and then somebody else was usually commissioning. Sometimes it was the packaging designer, sometimes it was, I think early days Sandra did all the commissioning of the portrait art. But I did a lot of it after she left in like the packaging commissioning.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I love how the all the different ships have different artwork. It gives the game a lot of character and depth, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Um, so did some of the game's artists do traditional work, or do you know if some of it, a lot of it was digital?
Almost. So as far as the ships goes and the actual like game components, it was all digital, 100%. I think I may even have some of the original files somewhere, so in my stuff. I know a
Nice.
lot got kind of lost when they did the shift from WizKids to NECA. Like some of the servers and stuff didn't get 100% saved when they did the transfer. But I have quite a bit that I know of, but I haven't looked at that stuff in a really long time. As far as the portrait work, I would say almost all, like I would probably all of it was done digital, as far as I know, just because that was also the aesthetic we were going for. Um, we purposely chose, we wanted like a modernized version of old paintings, but done in a very digital, roughing in, blocking in style. So we wanted to bring something new to the genre, the pirates genre, without copying like what had been done before, like old oil paintings and such, but like giving it a new, fresh look. And so we hired some artists that now are some of the biggest artists in the industry. So you have like Kieran Yanner, who works at Wizards of the Coast now. He's an art director for Magic. We have Vance Kovacs, who he's a concept artist at for a lot of your major feature films. Justin Sweet as well. So a lot of those guys that were, somewhat, I would say, somewhat earlier on in their careers have like really, really gone pretty big time.
Yeah.
um, and then as far as the packaging art, there was a little bit of traditional in there, but it was 99% of it was all digital work. I think there was a couple pieces that we had found that we actually somewhat licensed from an existing kind of age of sail style artists, that we then either modified or used them. And I can't remember. I just remember reaching out to a couple, and I don't know how many of those actually went to print, but majority of them were digital pieces that we hired out. And then like one of the artists that did quite a bit with Pirates later on was Vincent Dutrait. And Vincent was interesting because, as far as I remember, when I reached out to him and found him, he had only done a couple, I think it were like a couple like pirate style or adventure style, like children's books. And he hadn't really stepped into games yet. So that was interesting. And like we brought him in and he did, some portraits and some like some of the actual ship art and such that was on the packaging, not the textures on the boats. But yeah, that was cool because now Vincent probably is, as I would say now, like I'm still in contact with Vincent, and he's probably one of the most prolific board game artists in the industry now. very, very well known. And he does a combination of um he does his stuff traditional, and then I know he mixes a little bit with as far as I remember, some digital in there as well. So he's kind of got a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. He's definitely on my list of hopeful future podcast guests. And yeah, I love his
Yeah, if
work.
you can, yeah, if you need contact, I can definitely put you in contact with Vincent. We still work together, um, in my current role. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear Justin Sweet's name too. There was someone has like a signed crew card from the original set Spanish Main, and we couldn't tell the last name on it. And then I saw his name, I think, in the credits for the adventure book, and was like, oh, maybe this is because we knew it wasn't Justin Zeron. So so I was like, oh, maybe this is Justin Sweet. And then Tiffany O'Brien was like, oh yeah, that must be who signed it. So it's good to know him a little better now too. So. For that traditional work that was done, do you know if any of it still exists in physical form?
yep, yep, that would be right one for sure.
Sorry, what was that? It got cut off.
No,
Oh, okay.
I mean the traditional stuff that actually was done. If I Oh, sorry. I just said, no, like, I don't think any, like, if it is, if it does exist, it was like we licensed the usage of like a pirate, like a ship painting from an existing artist on cover, but I think that maybe have only been like one time. It was like, and it was an existing piece that I remember. But to be honest, like I'm out to a couple artists that had existing works and it, but I don't know if they actually went to print.
Okay. Okay. So probably not. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. What was your favorite type of packaging you designed for the game? Like packs, tins, or boxes, or anything else?
I mean, in general, like I really loved the doing the actual like the flow packs, like the booster packs. That was always super fun to me because being able to work with the foil material and like what pieces, like what actually had that metallic look and what didn't, and like work with. So from a designer point of view, it was kind of a geek out on like, okay, how do I use the material to make it look fun? Uh,
Yeah, it's cutting
so
off a
that
little
was
bit.
always for me. I think I'm trying to think of anything else. Like if I can switch to like headphone help. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I've got your site up where you've got the pirates um, pictures of the artwork and whatnot. So
How about now? Is it a little better now?
yeah, yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Sorry. So
You're
yeah,
good.
so as far as like the packaging, like I love the booster packs just because it like is from a designer point of view, it's like it's a fun experience to be able to work with foil material and using white plates and seeing how it like affects the foil and making it really flashy and fun. But as far as like I always liked a new form factor and doing something new. The adventure book, I remember that was a cool new thing because it was like it looked like a book, but we had this cool like window that you could see stuff, and it was just like a new thing. I remember prototyping that. And then like displays or anything like larger format when we were creating larger format ships and things like that for events and such. So yeah, I mean generally I always like a new challenge and doing something fun, and anytime you can see anything you do that sits on a shelf at a store, it's like it's really fun to do. See, I still see every once in a while, like I'll walk through like an old like a bookstore or something that sells like used books, and they'll have like a used or like a unopened tin or something like that. And I'm like, whoa, where did they get this? Or um, I went into an old a sports card store the other day, and they were having it was almost like they were like clearing it out because the owners had sold it or something, and so they had like an estate person going through and like just clearing out all their stuff, and they had like pirates and they had Star Wars Pocket models and they had a whole bunch of stuff that was just just sitting there like either that there was just old product that, they had like been keeping or whatever, or somebody had turned it in. It was pretty amazing, blast from the past.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Somebody just, I think this weekend was asking in the Pirate CSG Discord about whether or not people can still find stuff at local game stores. And there are a few reports of that, maybe once or twice a year, but definitely pretty rare. So that is
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean, I think usually you have better chances like at those like estate sales or something, or if like one of the companies goes out of business, or like, somebody's collection that they've, I think you could still find it for sure. Or if like one of us, like the old WizKids guys, if we still have product, sometimes we will, like, let it go or something like that. So I know I still have an uncut sheet of cards with my particular, like the Thane Hartless card. Um, it's an unpunched,
Wow.
just printed on the styrene, somewhere in my like stuff. And then I have some of the old, um, like gold foil, ships, and like the silver foil ships and things like that were done, I think I know I have them for the Star Wars pocket models. I can't remember if I've got them for Pirates. But yeah, I've got a various, collection of stuff still that I just keep for my own personal.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, those uncut sheets are wild. I don't have any yet. I think a few showed up on eBay some years ago, but definitely a fun rarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you design any of the ship artwork for the game, or was it mostly more the packaging?
Majority of the time I was doing packaging, but I did do a few. I just can't remember which ones I did. I did early on, like, um, the actual, like, like after Ethan was the one that did almost, well, I'd say Ethan and Kian, they did majority of the like the model design, and then I know Daryl did a little bit in like the later years, but then and then Daryl and like a bunch of the other graphic designers that were on my team, they were actually doing a lot of the texturing of the ships, but I did get in there as well. I just can't remember which ones I got involved with. There were so many of them.
Yeah.
um
Nice. Do you remember a favorite pack or set artwork you did, like Crimson Coast or Savage Shores or anything like that?
I'm trying to remember. um They all kind of blend. I remember the one that was like, what was it? Was it Revolution?
Yeah, that one's
Uh,
got like a big ship like headed straight towards, you know, the user, the viewer, essentially. Pretty
yeah, and
nice.
then
That
there was
stuff, man.
one. I remember there was another one that was like what was it? I don't remember all the set names. I'm totally blanking. What was it, like had like a Viking ship style?
Yeah, Frozen North. Yeah. Yeah, I sent you a
Yes,
quick
Frozen
link to
North.
my
That
site.
one was, I remember, super fun. I remember working with the artist on like the actual design of the ship, and how we wanted it to look. And then there was also Davy Jones' Curse was super cool, because that's when we introduced like the monsters, like the sea monster stuff, and bringing in though that more of that darker kind of like, um magical entity to it. Like, it was very fun. And then of course the when we did the spin-off one of the, Pirates of the Caribbean, that was also a cool challenge, to figure out how to like blend in Pirates of the Caribbean into our existing, property. And like at that time, I remember Disney didn't have. It was really funny because we got involved in, they wanted we did that license, and Disney didn't have a style guide for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh,
There wasn't a, because we got in so early of that, for that particular, thing, and so we had to come up with a look for them. Like, the only thing they had were like pictures of the actors. And so I remember we were working on that one and another, like our main set, at the exact same time. And so I worked with a design team that I had worked with in the past, and, it was, Creative Pilot was the name of the agency, who had worked with Disney before. And the two, like me and them, like worked together on developing a essentially a style guide for Disney to some extent for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. Wow, that's really fascinating, actually. Huh. Interesting. Do you know the story behind the first faded printing of Spanish Main? The first set, and it had like the first printing had kind of a faded, more whitish, like yellow parchment color, and then it was kind of like less of a pastel color, and the other printings. I've never really discovered the origin of that, if you have any insight.
I mean, other than it might have been like a print error, I know in the very beginning, um, it was definitely a somewhat of a new because we were working on a new medium, so styrene, the material, is very interesting to actually print on. It kind of breaks a lot of the rules that we had established within design and print. So normally when you print on a plastic for say, it's non-porous. It has and so you will get really crisp colors and such, and you have to um and so it's like normally really easy. Styrene tends to act a lot like almost like newsprint, where it's the material actually is super porous, and the ink actually will seep into the plastic. And so what we found is like if we put down like our normal amount of ink that we would for just like a like a paper or any other printed material, it would just almost turn black.
Whoa, holy crap.
And so we were getting like this oversaturation effect. And so I know when I was working on it, like in the early days when we were getting some of those early tests, I had to do a process where we would create all of the cards and they would look great on screen and everything would look really great from our own prints on our own paper. But once we were to send it off to the factory to actually get printed, I ran everything through an action script that essentially put a color profile that stripped everything down to where on screen it looked like there was almost no ink on screen. Like it would just look like everything was faded out. And then when we would print it, it would come in at full color. So it was always like this pretty cool, like, it was a little bit of like this troubleshooting of it where it looked like crap on screen. But then when you actually saw it, it was like this beautiful, full color illustration because of how it acted on the actual styrene material. So it might have been that like those could have been like an early print or something like that, but I wouldn't think that it would be something intentional.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. That does sound like a frustrating thing to work with, kind of like overcorrecting and then hoping the final comes out the way it needs
Yeah.
to. Interesting.
Yeah, and I remember it was actually I had been working on role-playing games at the time. I also did a bunch of designs for role-playing games for another company, and I was having some color issues as well in the same respect. And because a lot of role-playing games they use a lower quality paper for their books because it's cheaper to produce. And um, I was able to use a similar process of removing a lot of the ink that would actually be put down on the paper and use that for the pirates production. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, very nice. This one's a little random, but do you know the cause of some of the uncommons from Spanish Main Unlimited, like the second or third printings of it having a gold corner? Because normally yellow or gold would be for rarity, but then some of the normally uncommons have silver, but some of them are kind of like a bronzish color. I don't know if the uncommons were originally going to be a different color.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that, I wouldn't. It could have been like a mistake, but I don't know. I can't remember. From those kind of particulars. One person that might know. Have you had a chance to talk with Mike Mulvihill yet?
No, not yet. I've reached out to him, but nothing yet.
Yeah. So, Mike, he knows a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff. But as far as some of the like printing and such that, sometimes it'll get, like things will happen or files will get swapped accidentally. I mean, we were doing so many cards, and so many sets a year that, mistakes are bound to happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I sent you a couple pics in the chat about somebody
Oh yeah.
found, I think it was last year. I'm going to look more into it soon, I think. But there was an eBay auction. Somebody had like a Spanish Main first edition set, and it included these really weird looking, looks like prototypes essentially. So we're just wondering if you've ever seen stuff like that from back in maybe even 2003 or 2004, like the first half of '04.
Yep.
If they're original prototypes and they've got like the Chinese lettering on them and stuff like that, like straight from the factory is what it looks like.
Yep. So these are totally legit. These are what we would get back. So during the process of creating the ships, we actually created everything on car in using a special cardboard that Ethan had found that was like the right thickness to match what we were going to be doing for cards. And he would prototype it all in cardboard, and then he would create like the actual die lines afterwards in Illustrator. We would send those off to the factory, and the factory would send us these white samples, so unprinted sheets that we would then test in the office to make sure that all the connection points were right, that everything was like punching through correctly. Just we would do the full testing of that, and then those sheets that you have there that are in the binder or in the sleeves, those are direct from the factory that we were working with at the time. Those were essentially their records of each type of die. And so it was like they would send this, and this usually came along with the prototype, and it would tell us, okay, this punch out or this card was the common die, and then or an uncommon die, or it was labeling everything so that we knew exactly where it was coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. Man.
It also told us like usually like the direction of the punch. It could kind of tell us like it, because if you flip a card over, or if, depending on like as you guys all know, that like the cards will snap better if you punch it from one side, or if they'll punch back in easier from another side.
Yeah.
And that has to do with the way that the die actually pushed through to make the ships.
Yeah, that makes
I don't
perfect
know if you guys
sense.
do you guys know how that process worked? Like like how they actually cut those?
Mike Selinker talked about it on a previous episode about how it was like a 24-foot long, maybe, or something like that, like a clicker press that comes down and just crushes like a massive sheet of styrene and breaks it pretty hard.
Yeah, so I can't remember how many cards up it had. It wasn't that big.
Yeah.
But it essentially was you can imagine, I think there was like, if I'm trying to remember, it usually had like this sheet here like has 6 cards here. I think it might have been 6 by 6. So it would be 6 of these 6 cards. So if you imagine, so then
Okay.
and then it would break up, then they would split those up again. So it was a big machine, like, and it had one big sheet of styrene with all those on there. And then it looked like they would literally put in one sheet of styrene, it's all printed, and it would come down on top of it like a huge piece of metal, and it would push through, and that actually cut it. So it wasn't like a normal cutting tool. Is the actual process of pushing through the styrene that actually created the cut. So it was like a very like micron level of a shape that was on the upper plate that would then press down with like thousands of pounds of pressure and make the sheet. And then they would do it at like a really break fast level where, and I watched them. I remember I went to Asia quite a few times
Wow.
to work with that process, and then also our miniatures, and then when we were developing the tins and such. And they would it was kind of scary because they would throw it in like by hand, like each sheet, and between every time the machine would open up and they would pull out the sheet, throw in the new one, it was like, and I was like, man, somebody's hand is gonna get like crushed in there. But
Yeah.
um, they were fast, and definitely did it. So we didn't have any injuries that we knew of.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, they have to punch them out quick to get it down to
Yep.
that good price of like $2 a ship, basically 3.99 a pack. So really
Yeah, yeah.
affordable. I noticed on the piece of paper at the bottom it says used for CC Crimson Coast and SM Spanish Main, not Revolution. So I'm thinking this might have been like a 2005 maybe prototype potentially. Because as far as I remember, what Mike Selinker and James Ernest talked about when the first set came out, there wasn't immediately plans for other sets. At least they didn't know how well it would sell. They didn't expect it to do such amazing things at the stores. So I'm wondering if this is more of like an '05 thing than an '04 thing based on those sets being
Yeah,
there.
I mean, usually what we did was like we did create the dies, and then I mean, I think that everybody hoped that it would be, it would be something, but we didn't know. You never know what's going to hit and what's not.
Yeah.
I remember that early days was the only plans was we were only going to do, well, it started off like it was literally just going to be 7 sets,
Huh.
because it was originally supposed to be only the 7 Cs. So like
Interesting.
that was the original plan from based on what I remember that Jordan, when he worked on it, like he was saying like, oh, it was supposed to be, the 7 Cs, we'll have 7 sets and then we'll be done. So
Huh.
like that was the and then
Interesting.
it ran like, what do we end up running, like 13 sets?
Yep. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it kind of was, it's funny in that respect, that you never know where things are going to go. But as far as like, we would never throw away a die if we knew that like we could use it going forward. So yeah, it could have been a scenario where this was a die that like we had from before and they were bringing in, or um or we were like in the case here where it says not revolution, this probably, it could have been a scenario where our uncommon die or our common die might have changed, based on the new ships we were bringing in for revolution. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. I love hearing about this history of all of it. So cool.
Yeah.
Um, how would you describe your process for creating character art? I know you may not have done a lot, but if you had like kind of like getting into the graphic designer specifics of it, if you had like how you would start creating one and then the process of
Yeah,
seeing
so
it
we
through.
usually, yeah, we would hire the concept artists, or sorry, the portrait artists for them, and we would write up a description for every single character. And I can't remember if we had their full names at that point, or if they were after. I believe we had names to start, um, and then that the artist would work from there. And we usually had a description of, this is where they're from, this is their, like, this is the type of person we want them to be. We want them to be like a strong woman, or we want them to be like this, dark and scary, ugly dude. You know what I mean? Like we were very like, okay, these are the types of looks we were going for. And sometimes we would also find reference to help the artist in that respect, to be like, okay, this is the direction we're going for the clothing, or this is the hat we want them to wear, or um, and we were really, especially if they came from a certain clan, or a certain area of the world, we would be like, okay, here's their, more or less, this is the clothing that they are wearing during that time period. Um, so base it off of this. So because we definitely wanted to make sure that we were time period somewhat accurate. Like, yes, this is a fantasy pirates, world that we were creating. And it was definitely, but it had some historical basis and things. Sometimes we come in with, brand new stuff, but a lot of times we did base it on what was historically factual, and then kind of romanticize it to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how the game is based on history, but then expands past that and
Yeah.
gets into
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
fun concepts. So,
And then we wanted the artists to also have fun.
yeah.
So again, it was like we gave them those descriptions, and then we'd like see what they'd come back with. And early stuff was like, sometimes really super loose, and then we'd say, okay, let's tighten up this area, or like let's do this or that. And of course, depending on the artist, some were a little bit, well, more detailed, other ones were a little more loose. It kind of, they evolved over time to some extent. But we tried to keep that like digital painterly look all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Do you know who did the Mysterious Islands box art? You sometimes there's like a signature on some of the artwork for some of the early sets, but I haven't seen one on this, I don't think.
Yeah, so that's the one with the what was it with the
The Nautilus submarine. I sent it in the chat.
yes, the submarine. So we had a couple 3D artists that were working on this, I remember in the early days, and so I believe part of the art was done by one artist, the actually painted part, and then this 3D piece of the submarine that might have either been done by Ian or Daryl, or it could have been done by we had a 3D artist that we would use every once in a while. I'm not finding him off the top of my like now. I'm like looking real quick, but yeah, we had a couple like in-house, if I remember right, that would actually do some of this stuff. And we would, I'm almost positive this could have been a Daryl or another 3D artist that we then use that like and superimpose it over a digital painting.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, really, it's like really almost photorealistic compared to some of the other stuff that was done for the box artwork. So pretty impressive.
Uh, Hudgens is his name, John Hudgens.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, no, I haven't heard that name before. Cool.
Yeah, John did a lot of our I know that he got very much involved in like the work we did on the Star Wars pocket models. He actually provided a lot of the early texturing for those because like his vast knowledge in, of course, he did some other work for us in the previous games and such, but for Star Wars specifically, he had quite a bit of content and he built a lot of those textures and such for us to use on those ships. And did some of the 3D work and such on that. And so it might have been John that did the actual this image.
Hmm. Interesting. So I guess Ethan did most of the physical like ship types and how they worked.
Hmm.
Um, do you know what inspired some of the later ones, like the Switchblades and the Scorpion ships and the Bombardiers, things like
I
that?
mean, I think Ethan just got a little more like creative to be honest. Like it
Yeah.
was like w- we often the factory would come back and say, okay, here's some other things they've done in the Sumer material, and we were seeing some of like the cool like movable pieces and how far could we push the material. You know, early days it was very much like very flat. We like even the curving of the hulls was a little bit new in that particular material for what we had seen. And so each set we'd like push a little bit further, and like what could we do with the material that was new and different, but at the same time still easy enough to build. Um, so I mean, I love Ethan. He was like somewhat of a magician in, you know, visualizing his stuff and figuring out how all the pieces would come together, and also just how much he could do with the small real estate that he was given. That was also the, you know, that the wizardry there. It's like, how do you build this amazing, you know, ship or this 3D form and you've only got a couple cards to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, not just that, but even just a couple inches on the deck, like fitting the moving pieces in with decks
Yeah.
on top of each other and things of that nature. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's
For sure.
wild.
Yeah,
Somebody, yeah.
it wasn't until later that I think it was on, I think Star Wars was, you know, coming after, you know, where we really pushed that envelope even further. And then of course NASCAR as well.
Yeah, interesting. Somebody a long time ago posted a picture of like a Leonardo da Vinci like drawing of something that may or may not have inspired the Scorpion ship design with like a stinger coming down. I can't find it right now, but that'd be interesting if he took some little historical inspiration there. I'll try to find
Yeah,
it again sometime.
I don't remember if that came into play. I mean, Ethan would be a good one to interview for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know when it was decided to change the numbering scheme for the cards and what kind of sparked that to come about? Basically, like it was numbered by faction primarily in Ocean's Edge, like the Cursed were first, and then the Pirates. But then in Pirates of the Caribbean, they changed it to rarity based rather than faction. So all the rare ships were first, then the rare crew, and then uncommon ships, uncommon crew. I'm just not sure. I know that happened with the Pirates of the like Pirates Pocket models, the name and like
Yep.
trademark design changed, but I don't know why
Yeah,
the
they did have like the. I remember the trademark change. I also remember when we changed the numbering system, but I don't remember the why. And I don't.
yeah,
Those two things together didn't have any like reason, between the two.
yeah,
It
yeah.
may have been just the fact that like, us looking at like what is a better way for the fans to really collect them and more understanding between um like a better system of the collectible, within like understanding rarities and such. I know like even in some of my other games that I'm working on and current games that I'm working on, it's really like learning how people are collecting things and how they're organizing their sets, if they're completionists or how they're doing it, also affects sometimes that those changes.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Um, do you know if there were any legal issues back in maybe '03 or '04 with Z cards or Wizards of the Coast when the card design was kind of coming up, essentially?
So I don't know a ton there. The only thing I know of, we did have some legal issues with Wizards of the Coast,
Yeah,
as far as mostly from the design of how it was played, and using the material like this, the styrene models to play a game and the mechanics based around it. I actually was just talking to Mike Mulvihill just last week about this. It was kind of funny. We were just like reminiscing about some stuff, and um, at the time, I remember I believe it was the Wizards of the Coast Transformers game that they had come out with about the same time period, and they were saying that like our system mimicked the same game system that they were doing, and I remember Mike Mulvihill was part of those deliberations, and he was like, no, that's not actually how our game is played. And so it was just kind of a funny thing. But yeah, there was I remember some early on stuff, but I wasn't too involved at that point. I was just a lowly graphic designer, didn't get involved in that stuff.
yeah, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it is kind of a weird story because I've read that patent, the Wizards of the Coast patent, a few times, and it's kind of similar, but it's also they refer to like a base, which the ships don't really have. Like they don't stand on something else, like some of the other like Age of Sail games have that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of I feel like it's a stretch, but oh well. But it's fascinating
Yeah.
because that patent's due to expire in October of this year. So I'm pretty interested to see what happens there. Probably nothing, but it'll definitely be on my radar.
Yeah, for sure. And as of right now, I don't know like where all the licenses are held at this point, as far as like the game, and like who owns the IP for Pirates overall, and like the game system overall, just because it's changed hands so many times, and like we've had some partners that were involved in it early on. Um I know there was some developments that like they were producing kind of like, I would call it like more evergreen sets of things, where they were like doing almost like combinations of stuff in some European countries and stuff. But like, yeah, I totally lost track of like who owns what at this point.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mean like European companies making like a knockoff version that was called something
No, so it
else?
wasn't
Or
like a knockoff version.
okay.
We worked with, I think it was Amigo at the time. They were essentially selling the Pirates brand as they did the Pirates board game international version in like Italy and a few other countries. And then I think there was some other sets where it was almost like a combo set of like multiple different ones, but they were being sold internationally, and we were licensing it out to other publishers to produce. But that's the last thing I remember, like some early like, and it could have been just like we were doing talks and such. But I know Amigo did the board game version. So
Okay. Yeah. Fascinating. Um,
I actually work with now the uh the the person that was working at Amigo who actually facilitated that license of producing the pirates in Italy and a couple of those European countries. It's funny that just a small world now that I'm working with him now at Ravensburger.
yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah, I have heard a little bit about how the rights to the game or some of the copyright and whatnot have gotten convoluted or is more complicated than it would first appear. Justin Zeron did answer a question I had, I think, a few years ago about how WizKids still, they're under NECA now, of course, but that WizKids still holds like the IP, essentially the copyright to the text and characters and things like that. So,
Yeah,
but
that's where I think it lands, as far as I know. I remember at one point, they reached out to me because I had a lot of the files, and they were looking at possibly, um, or at least I had a bunch of them that I remembered, that because they were trying to collect everything and possibly do a like either a refresh or like a reprinting or something. But that's been a number of years ago, so I have no idea like if there are any current plans to bring it back.
yeah, fascinating. I would assume that was an effort they did in like 2011 or 12 for the shuffling the deck version. I'm not sure if you have heard of that part.
Yeah, that might have been yeah, that might have been around the right time now that I'm thinking about it from, history wise. I remember it was a few years after the NECA sale and everything's transferred, and then I think Justin and a couple of people reached out to me at that point, and wondering if I had some stuff.
Okay. I'm thinking that's probably what it was. Because even on their current page for it that I just sent over, you see some of the same artwork got reused and stuff like that. It looks like Grim the Savage is under like a Dutch flag, maybe something like that. But um, that's probably what it was for. I'm thinking. I'm
Oh
just
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm looking here. It looks like
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. I'd be fascinated if it was for anything else, but I'm thinking it's probably was just for that, the card game version. So
Yeah.
yeah. Man, I hate to end it here, but hopefully we could do more. I know
Well, I
there's a
got
lot
some more
more.
time if you have any other
Okay.
questions you want to run through.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Just let me know whenever you want to cut off. I know you got to
Yeah,
run, so
yeah.
that there's no problem with that at all. But yeah, so one of the crazier collecting stories is always around the Obago Deuce, which was a ship that didn't really get fully released back in the heyday when things were getting chaotic with the recession and um, Wizkids shutting down in Washington, things like that. But
Yep.
did you ever get your hands on an Obago Deuce in 2008?
I mean, I got one of everything. So that was part of the WizKids deal, was that we got one of everything that was ever produced. If they were prototypes, we weren't guaranteed to get it, but sometimes, just being in the, around stuff, I have like, some of the prototypes of things and such that that I would have gotten. But as far as like particular ship, like specifying which one, and that would be, I might have had it at one point, or
Yeah.
um and but as far as like the history in that, I don't remember it totally.
Okay.
So
Yeah, no worries. So you don't know how many were printed probably of
no,
that ship? Yeah. Okay.
no. And
Yeah.
like depending on the time frame of when that was printed, or like in the year or something like that, like Um, so Tina Wegner was head of production, and she really was the one that like would have known as far as like how many were produced and like how much things cost, and she was our main point of contact with the factory and production and shipping and all that, and really was like held all the chips on that kind of content as far. But at the same time, her memory isn't super great on that kind of stuff, just because I've talked to her about things and she's like, I don't remember any of that stuff anymore. But
Yeah.
um, she probably could give you a little bit of an insight on production and things if you ever wanted to know a little bit about that kind of thing. But
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've actually not heard that name before, so thank you for mentioning her. I'll have to look
yeah,
her up.
Tina was like she was our she did all the she was head of production for WizKids for a number of years, really until the end, and then actually came on to Wonderforge Games, which became Ravensburger Games in the North America, and that's where I worked with Tina again here at Ravensburger, and then she left just shortly a year or two ago. So
Okay, interesting. Yeah, there's like theories that the Obago Deuce, it's like the rarest ship in the game. Some people think there were about 30 produced, but then somebody else researched it and think there's like 55 or 57. So it's always a fun hot topic in the community. One of them sold for, um, I think the record price right now is like $1,825 for that one ship from a couple of years ago. So it's
wow.
gotten, yeah,
Wow,
no,
that's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have suspected it would be that small of a number just
yeah,
based on our own, production runs. Um, I think like the smallest number we would ever have done like on a like something like that could be around 50 or so if we did a something special, but or if it was like a very small run within a sheet, that kind of thing. But yeah, there's got to be at least, I mean, yeah, there's got to be more than that out there, or at least that would have been produced and then maybe just didn't get fully out there into the wild.
yeah, yeah. It's really, really pretty bizarre, actually. Um, and then we'll skip the next one about Bago Juice. So you did design at least some of the adventure book. Do you know if any playable game pieces were ever produced for it, even if they were just prototypes?
I can't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember doing the prototype for it. I remember seeing like actual samples and such in house of the packaging, and I'm trying to remember if there was, yeah, I don't, yeah, that's the last thing I remember.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think I have one of those samples. There's only two that I know about. Somebody posted on my site that they have one, and
Yeah,
they
how
were
did you get a hold of the sample one?
So basically, that was only this year. It sold on eBay in 2011 to one of the members of the community, and she actually got it for only like 53 bucks back then. She was in contact. I think she knew about it because this really kind of infamous or famous German collector whose screen name was Old Man over in Germany, he alerted her to it, and he already had like almost everything that was ever part of the game's history, like collecting wise. So she was able to win the auction. And then we've been discussing various topics over the years. And then this year she said I should be the one to have it, if anybody. So I bought it from her. Um, I don't know
That's
who the
crazy.
original eBay seller was back in 2011. It was probably somebody that worked at WizKids, I would imagine. But I'm not sure
Yeah,
about this other copy that somebody at my site has. I don't really know much about them or how they got a hold of it, but definitely might look more into that at some
yeah,
point. So
there was one of the guys that had left WizKids that he facilitated a lot of the old WizKids sales. Um, and he kind of created like his own business of selling product from people as they were leaving some of these gaming companies. And so I know a lot of that. His name is Wade Segayama, and he would facilitate those sales. So like a lot of the WizKids got people that didn't know very much about eBay or didn't want to know or didn't want to go through the hassle, they would essentially hand hit their full collection of contents over to him, and then he would sell it all for them. So that's usually the way that like a lot of it hit the hit, hit eBay.
yeah, yeah, he must have been the one probably posting some of the Obago juices because some of them were sold on eBay in 2009, back when they were only like 50 to 100 bucks. Now it's
Yeah,
like gone crazy with the inflation over the years. So
yeah,
very interesting. Um, and let me see. It looks like Vincent Dutrait did some of the artwork for the adventure book. At least I have a note about
yep.
that. But okay, I think
Yeah,
I
that seems right. He also did the one that's like I'm looking at this like shuffling the deck card game. That image, it that's of the ships fighting there. That's definitely a Vincent Dutrait piece just by the style. I can tell right away.
Yeah.
Um, so there's Vincent did quite a bit just because he was so prolific, especially at the ships itself, that I loved working with him, and so yeah, we did quite a bit there.
Yeah. Yeah. His stuff is definitely pretty cool. His site, it still has some of the Pirates artwork on it mixed in with some other stuff for potentially other
Yeah,
games,
I mean, it's been a number of years, and he's done so much since then that I'm sure
but
it's being slowly pushed down in the list.
yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's fascinating that I know that Wade name from somewhere. I can't remember where, but there's still some folks that post stuff on eBay. I'll get the name of
Yeah, I
one of
don't think
them.
Wade's doing anything now. He's moved away from that for a while. Wade was, um, he was one of the, I think, assistant brand managers or brand managers at the time for HeroClix. He might have done a little bit of pirate stuff with Tiffany, um, as well. So yeah.
Yeah, now I'm looking it up in the crew database. Um, Gus Schultz, whoever became known as him in the game, he was like an American crew from the South China Sea set. Um, he still posts stuff on eBay occasionally, at least did the past few years. So even in
Interesting.
2023, it's crazy to see.
I don't
Some.
even know that name.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look more into it. I want to say he was the one that said he had been on the factory floor, but I'll have to look through my messages. I'll get back to you if Gus Schultz was the one that said something about that to somebody. So eBay is
Yeah, that's
definitely,
weird 'cause, like I knew pretty much everybody that on the production level,
huh,
and who would also actually be able to even going to the factories at that point. So
yeah, fascinating. Huh. Yeah, it's crazy the weird like history collecting rabbit holes you can go down on eBay because somebody will post something out of the blue and you've never seen the username, and then you'll message them like, "Where did you get it?" And it's like, "Oh, I worked for Wizkids," and it's like, "Whoa!" And then I'm like off to the races, hoping for more responses. Uh,
yeah, I'm looking at the Schultz crew right now. Just I looked it up just to see if I even, and yeah, does not look
yeah,
familiar at all.
fascinating. Huh. Yeah. Oh wow! I just I'm reading the flavor text. It says no one knows much about Gus Schultz. He doesn't discuss his past, even when you can get him to talk. Weird.
That's
I
funny.
guess that's fitting then. Huh. Yeah, I'll have to look more
Yeah,
into it.
the only person that would really probably know as far as who were those would be Tiffany,
Yeah.
because she knew all the people that we put onto the crew, that were usually, that were paintings of employees. So
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm hoping to play with her again probably next month. We might play in Bellevue if you ever wanted to join. So that's where we played like a couple of years ago. So it was pretty
yeah,
fun
I
to
mean,
return
and
to it.
definitely, I know I mentioned to Mike Mulvihill as well that I was going to be talking to you, and he was like, "Hey, you should have him call me."
Okay.
So he would be totally
Nice.
up to playing and talking for sure. He's in the area still, and I
Yeah.
work with him at Ravensburger, so he's like, we talk every day. So
Wow. Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, thank you. I have messaged him a little bit. I don't think he's responded yet, but that's really awesome to hear. So that'd be a dream
yeah,
come
he's
true for
the
sure.
best. He's going to be most respondent to an email over like a messenger.
Okay, that's good to know. All right. Let's see. So concerning the theoretical 14th set, Return to Savage Shores, did you design any artwork for that unreleased set?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like where that cutoff was, I left WizKids. mm, It was like in September, and then it was like October when they shut the doors in the Bellevue office, and then there was that hiatus between when they shifted over to NECA and such. So it was like yeah, as far as what was developed or what was in the process of developing, I it's hard to remember.
Okay. Yeah, no worries at all. And then
At
another
that
one.
point too, I
Yeah.
was managing like all of the creative, so it was and then training Matt McAnally because I knew I was leaving and training him to take over as I was leaving, and so I had all of the sculpting for all of our miniatures games plus the Pirates work and such. So um, my focus was definitely divided at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, definitely really crazy fall time that year. Totally bizarre. And then concerning another thing that didn't see a full release was the ships in a bottle. I talked to Tiffany a little bit about it. Do you happen to know if more than the two prototypes ever got produced for those and where they ended up or who got
No,
them?
I remember like I can briefly remember the even talking about it and developing, the idea around it. But as far, you know as much as me at this point now.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's really for a while it seemed like there would be four different ships. Only two have been found back on eBay, like 2010, I think, 2009 maybe. And it seemed like four might exist because a lot of the sets had four special edition ships for the special edition boxes,
Yep.
but neither of the other two theoretical other two have ever showed up. So maybe it was just those two. So
Yeah, the person that would know on that one is definitely Ethan.
okay, interesting. Okay, awesome. And then man, so many fun unreleased like collectibles to talk about. So the Ocho Brazo was a Kraken that was originally going to be released, I think, in Rise of the Fiends. It made it on the checklist and everything, but I don't know if artwork for that was ever produced. I think I talked to, I want to say Kyle Wolf said there wasn't, but I can't remember for sure. Um, it's like an
Mm,
unreleased Kraken. Let me see if I can unearth anything
I,
about it.
I don't even know that name that you just said.
Okay, okay, interesting.
What did you say his name was?
Ocho Brazo. It means like
No, but
eight
so
arms or whatever.
you said somebody Wolf.
Yeah, Kyle Wolfel. He was the rules
Oh,
arbitrator after Tony Vigil left. So
yes, yes, yes. I know that name. But yeah, as far as like, yeah, I don't remember if that was ever what got produced at that point.
yeah, yeah. I guess Ethan probably would have been the one to design it potentially. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, this was this was a question from someone else. If you could take back one piece of artwork or design, what would it be? In other words, are there any particular pieces of ship or crew artwork that you feel didn't hold up or shouldn't have made it past the cutting room?
No, I don't know. I would be able to answer as far as, that point. So,
Yeah, yeah, no worries. And then many misprints seem to have been fixed in foreign language printings of the game. Were you also responsible for the artwork on these versions of the sets, like some of the German and French stuff?
we did all of that stuff if like we had them usually translated out outside, and then we'd get the localizations and we would do the work on those, or we would sometimes, depending on the workload, we would have the outside whoever was doing the distribution, we'd hand them the files and then they'd make those changes. But yeah, as far as if I remember, which ones or not, that's nope, don't remember those.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Do you know where the ships were made, like the factory in China or wherever and stuff like that?
I do know the names, but I'm not allowed to provide that content.
Yep,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, no
so
worries. Yeah. Do you know? Okay. Oh, this is a good one. Somebody mentioned this year. I'm glad they thought of it. It says, do you know what type of printer was used for the card making process, such as a flexographic press due to the material being used, or stochastic press, or digital press?
Uh, it is, I believe it's none of those. I don't know the name, but it's a special press just for printing on this styrene material. Like I said before, it has a different attribute than normal um, printing on, like if we're doing flexo for, um, flexos, for example, used a lot on flow packs and things like that. But I don't remember the exact names of the printer type that prints on the styrene. because I know it's a very special printing process so that it, like I said, it absorbs ink, which is different than those other types.
Okay, yeah, that'll still be probably useful for him. So awesome. Did you have
Yeah.
any involvement with the Sony Online Entertainment digital version of the game?
Yep. So we did all the like we provide them all the content, all of the art, and then we would do all the like review as they were building it out. And then it was more of just like a consultation type thing from an art perspective. And then I know the game design team had much more involvement as far as the mechanics and how that was, true to our property.
Yeah, that
So.
makes sense. Since the artwork was a lot of it was digital, it was probably relatively easy to convert it um, to the online game. Just with like, it seems,
Um, I mean, they had to build all the ships from scratch. I mean, because it's like a 3D
yeah,
universe 2D. So a lot of it was, we gave them, as much art as we could, and they tried to be true to things, but there was definitely some, building from scratch for them. So it
yeah,
wasn't until later years that we actually started like building things more out of 3D to help with the development of the ships and such, but majority of it was still like a 2D form. It wasn't until Star Wars Pocket Models that we were doing a lot more 3D work because of the texturing that involved, and then also we did a lot more digital prototyping with how those ships were put together.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it reminds me one of the cooler project in the current Pirate CSG community. People are actually trying to make like not the same digital version, kind of like a new one of sorts where they're using different processes. I'm not experienced in like the technical aspects of it, but they're able to we're doing a scan project where we scan all the cards that were ever produced, and then they're able to use that to create like a 3D digital model of it. I think photogrammetry was one of the techniques used at some point, but I think
Oh, or
they found a
like
fast I think they
um,
found a faster way to do it now just from the scans, even just like making going from 2D to 3D. So it's pretty crazy.
so are they actually making 3D like from like to be able to build them like they were like the actual the models themselves, or are they actually making like 3D realistic ships?
I think more of the former.
Okay.
Essentially trying to make a digital version using like tabletop simulator and things like that
Yep.
and making it look like you're playing in real life. So not like realistic, like a movie or anything, but definitely
Yeah.
able to play a 3D version online that
Yeah.
looks the
So
same as
we used
tabletop.
so in the later days of the game, we actually had built most of those ships in that
Oh,
process. I believe we used Rhino at the time, and built all the ships in 3D, and that's actually how we did a lot of the like instruction sheets to actually how to put them together were done in 3D.
yeah, nice. Rhino, like being a computer program
Yeah,
used for,
Rhino is
yeah,
the program.
yeah,
Um, I think if we were to do it again, we probably would do it something else.
yeah,
As time has passed,
yeah,
but Rhino was good for what we needed at the time.
yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm wondering how AI and VR and stuff like that will affect games like this and potentially help bring them back to life in the future, even if it's
Yeah,
still,
possibly.
5 to 10 years away. But
Yeah,
yeah. Do you remember
it'd
a
be fun to
favorite?
see something in a fully digital form, but like actually all the models. That would be a definitely a fun. You know, I could see something like that as like a mobile game or something would be pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Do you remember a favorite game piece you worked on? Like if there was a specific ship or crew or anything?
Uh,
I've got yours on deck for the next question, so we can skip to that if you want.
Yeah, maybe just go to that one. I don't know.
Okay.
Like, as far as yeah, there were so many. It's hard to
Yeah,
pinpoint everything. I think, it was yeah, I can't remember anything off the top of my head.
yeah, yeah. So Thane Hartless, you were one of the uh, bunch of people that got into the game as a
Yep.
crew. So did you have to ask Mike Mulvihill or somebody about that, or did they want to do it from the start?
Yeah, it was like kind of an idea, and I can't remember, the full like who started the or whatever. It might have been Tiffany. But it was like one of those things where we liked the idea of like how do we get some of the employees into the set. It was very much a kind of like a morale thing of all the everybody that had been very much involved in the product. And so there's various people that are in that. And then we had an artist at the time um that was really good at taking existing portraits. And I think mine was done by Kieran Yanner. um and we had a couple of those. We'd send them the portrait and then they would put us into the game essentially. So it was more of like I don't think it was anything strategic in that respect, but it was very much more just like this fun thing to put us into the game. And we wanted to make sure too that it didn't look like cheesy in that respect, as far as like some bad photo that was being put into the game.
Yeah.
There were We had done it a few times, I think, in our Mech Warrior game. We had done some of the different pilots were also members of the employees. And I'm trying to think if there was any other game before that we did that. But yeah, in general, like it was kind of one of those things that was always a fun thing to add in. So
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I'm wondering if I could get Tiffany to play as herself in the game this summer. Play
I'm
as
sure.
Eileen.
I'm sure.
That'd be awesome. Do you have a favorite ship type, like a five master or like a three-masted submarine or a
No,
Kraken?
I mean, I was definitely a fan of the sea monsters in general. Just like I thought they were like just visually super cool. I know that from a gameplay, they were not as um, exciting as people had hoped they would be, from what I've heard. But yeah, I always thought they were pretty cool. I always and then any of the ships that we started to break away from the um, standard Age of Sail ships that like we did some of the more Asian ships and things like that. Those were always really fun to just do different ones. So.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Did you have any ideas that didn't make it into the game's production run?
No idea. Like
No.
we often like brainstormed all kinds of crazy stuff. So as far as like what didn't make it in, would not be able to tell you.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. What's your favorite memory of Pirate CSG,
um,
if you're able to pick one?
I have to think. I mean, I mean in general, like that was a fun point within the WizKids history, as far as like the hype of pirates, and then it leading into the other pocket models like Rocketman and Star Wars and um the NASCAR one. It was just kind of like somewhat of a the height of WizKids, and it was just really fun to be part of something that people were really excited about, and the fans were really loving. And for me, that's in general, that's what I love about being part of this industry. Is I love when people get excited about what we produced, and how much joy that we bring to others' lives. Like right now I'm the creative director for Ravensburger games globally. So and that is just like that's what's always brought joy to me in this industry, is just all the fans that come up and they're like, oh, love this piece, and or I love this particular card, or this I love this game, we play it every night with our friends, or that's exciting for me, more so than maybe like individual pieces. Though I would say, like, I know this isn't pirates, but the the Halo action clicks when we did the Scarab, the full size Scarab. That was probably one of the highlights in my career with when, or at least highlights in at my time at WizKids, was developing that, because it was one of the biggest things I developed as a product, and just the work that went into that was pretty exciting. And then of course, um, all the other there was I mean there was so much stuff that was really really fun with Wizkids. And I don't know if you've noticed from like all the people that have worked at Wizkids over the years and really were part of that core group, we all are still connected. It was like a big family kind of thing. We're
Yeah.
very much a community that we all talk very highly of, and it was a cool period of time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds amazing. Yeah, Tiffany talked about how she still sees the Wisemans a bit, or talked about texting Mike Mulvihill when we were getting ready to do our podcast in 2019 to help her remember a few things like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
Well,
awesome.
Tiffany, it's a little hard for them not to see the Weismans just because, family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
fair.
so she's kind of stuck with them. But yeah, I run into Jordan every once in a while, still like I work with Mike. Um, Tina was working with me for a number, of years and just barely left. And then trying to think of who else from the WizKids crew. Like I'm still, like a lot of the designers I'm still involved with, like, in general, like we chat and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Sandra.
so it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, Sandra was the one that recommended talking to you because you know a little bit
Yeah,
more
I just
about it
saw
than me.
Sandra like last week,
Yeah.
so because I was showing her my latest project. So I'm the creative director for Disney Lorcana.
Yep.
Um, and
Nice.
so that she had she'd consulted with us early on in the production of some of the stuff. And so I was showing her some of the latest stuff. And so, yeah, Sandra and I, we're very well, still, very good friends. I was just at her wedding, not too long ago and such. So, yeah.
Yeah, nice. That kind of spirit has lived on through Pirates too, because the community now is still pretty active. There's messages every day at the Discord group. Um, and yeah, it's like this game has a way of bringing people together, even though it's about piracy and murder, basically, and like stealing. It's like it has this weird way of like creating really non-toxic, like really wholesome relationships and whatnot. So it's
For
awesome.
sure.
So I
Well,
know,
I've got to,
yeah,
yeah, I've got to go, but
yeah,
this has been awesome
yeah,
talking for sure. And yeah, and if you like I said, like reach out to me if you need contacts with anybody in particular that you want to meet with or chat with. I can usually I can put you in contact with Mike, and then of course Ethan, Tina if you want to know her from production stuff.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, so those are some of the core people. I don't know if you've had met with Daryl Rusfold.
No, I think I've reached out to him, but haven't talked to him yet.
Um, yeah, he was more in the later. Did you talk with Kian?
No, he wasn't able to. I messaged him, I think it was 2019, so I'll probably reach back out. He wasn't able to back then, so
Yeah, I know he was really big. He was pretty busy with like a lot of the stuff over at Microsoft. So um, yeah, I don't know there, but yeah, I think Ethan would probably be your like one that you want to talk to. Both Ian and Mike are like the top two that I would recommend getting a chance to talk with for sure.
yeah, yeah, sounds awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
of course.
coming on too. Hopefully we can do a part two, but either way, love to love to play someday. So
All right, good
awesome.
deal.
Yep. All right,
Well, it's
everybody.
nice meeting you, and have a good one.
Hell yeah, you too. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. This was Pirate CSG episode number 56 with Shane Hartley. And thanks for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes. Anchor is the new host. And hopefully we'll get a part two to finish up the questions. But either way, this was really fascinating to hear about a lot of different aspects of the game and definitely some kind of little hidden secrets from over the years. So thanks again for listening. Let me know how to improve it or if you have any other guest suggestions, or let me know if you want to be on a podcast episode at some point. And keep playing pirates.